So Republican Senator Rick Scott wants America to get back to work. Now, it's a strange talking point to use when unemployment is as low as it's essentially been for 50 years. So we're going to look at this video, and the important thing to think about here is once you commit to certain talking points, as the Republican Party has, you can't change them based on what's going on. And we've seen this with debt and deficit. We've got to balance the budget. Well, Republican presidents never do, so they just stop talking about it when a Republican is in office and blowing up the deficit. But they don't abandon the talking point. They just don't mention it anymore. Now that there's a Democrat in the White House, they have to go to America. It's got to get back to work. We need people working, and people are working, and we're going to look at those numbers. But check out Rick Scott when all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, or whatever you want to say. But the talking point is Republicans get people to work. Democrats are lazy. And so when there's a Democratic president, people don't work. Doesn't matter if it doesn't line up with the facts.
Here's what I believe. We've got to get Americans back to work. If you're able-bodied, you don't have young children, incapacitated, dependent, get to work.
Right. Just go. Stop being lazy. If you're not handicapped, if you don't have a disability, if you don't have a physical issue, maybe they would consider mental issues too. I don't know. That's a touch and go with Republicans. They claim to care about mental health, but then they don't seem to. You got to get to work because nobody's working these days, and it's part of the culture and the economic policy of Biden. And then you look at the unemployment rate, and you see that the unemployment rate right now is essentially as low as it's been since the early 1970s. You have to go, you've had this brief period in 2019, and then you've got to go all the way back to the early 1970s to find a period during which unemployment was this low. Now, I know that there are people going to hear me say that, and they'll say, but David, the unemployment rate tells us nothing. The truth is in the labor participation rate. Remember, we've talked about this claim from the right for the last decade, and I've explained the labor participation rate many times before, and I will do it again. Now, the labor participation rate is a more complicated issue, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But when you look at the labor participation rate, you'll find that it's right around 62%, roughly where it was in 2015 as well. Now, why isn't the labor participation rate a really great indicator for the health of the economy? Well, there's a couple of different things. Number one, the size of our population keeps growing. So at almost any time period, you can accurately say there are more people than ever working, and there are more people than ever not working. So what does that really tell us? But there's also a few important things to consider. Number one, we are in the midst of a significant retiring phase for baby boomers. That takes people out of the labor force. Is it an indicator the economy is bad? No. In fact, you could argue it's an indicator the economy is good. When people can afford to retire, it signals that you have an okay economy. The other thing about this is that when you look at the labor force participation rate, if you have full-time parents who aren't working by choice, that lowers the labor participation rate. But that's a good thing. When the economy gets worse, some of those full-time parents say, hey, I can't afford not to work. I have to go and get a job. Labor participation rate goes up, but not because the economy's good. It's actually because the economy is bad. And also, as another reminder, if you're in college, undergrads in college, if you're just in school full time, you count against the labor participation rate. But again, when there's a better economy, 18 to 22-year-olds can afford to go to school full time instead of having to get a job to help their family, help their parents, or whatever the case may be. So labor participation rate, not a good indicator. Back to the main point. We have right now significant levels of employment. We have a labor participation rate that is normal. It's not particularly high or particularly low. You have many companies looking to hire. And yes, we have high inflation, which I believe has peaked and is going to start coming down. Gas prices have already been coming down for the last 6 weeks, etc. It is very hard to argue that this is a disastrous economy. Now, you can also talk about wages. Inflation-adjusted wages are actually doing okay. Have there been, if you look at a 40-year period, stagnant wages? Has productivity growth dramatically outpaced inflation-adjusted wages? Yes, and that's a bigger issue that relates to technology and corporate power and so many different things. But by the standards we use to look at wages, we've seen some pretty okay wage increases. So while they have not kept up with productivity, there is no doubt that that indicator also isn't a sign of this terrible economy. So Rick Scott and other Republicans, there has never been a time, even under Barack Obama, during this massive recovery from the 2008, 2009 recession. Even then, when we started to see unemployment drop, the stock market explode, consumer confidence go up, inflation very, very controlled, even then, they weren't willing to accept it. And as I've said before, many of these things only have a little bit to do with the president anyway. But once you're married to these talking points, you have to stick with them. And that's exactly what we are seeing. There is a new story involving Secret Service text messages related to the Trump riots that has now gone viral and exploded. I'm going to tell you what's going on. And remember, just because text messages have been erased doesn't mean they aren't retrievable. And indeed, the latest news is that the text messages, despite being deleted, are going to be retrieved. So let's jump into the story. CNBC report. January 6th panel subpoena Secret Service for erased texts. The House committee investigating the U.S. Capitol attack subpoenaed the Secret Service for text messages agents reportedly deleted right around January 6, 2021, the date of the Trump riots. Committee Chairman Benny Thompson said in a statement the committee understands the messages had been erased. Thompson outlined an aggressive timeline for the production of the documents by Tuesday, that's tomorrow. And I'll tell you in a moment whether they are going to have the text messages by that date. The Guardian reports January 6th committee to receive deleted Secret Service texts, according to Democrat. Agency's account of how texts sent on Capitol attack and day before were lost has shifted several times. When you get different explanations for the same occurrence, it's not proof that someone is lying, but it's at least a suggestion that you should be looking into what the hell is going on. Deleted Secret Service texts sent on January 6th, the day of the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, will be released by Tuesday to the House committee. You can imagine how shocked we were to get the letter from the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General saying he'd been trying to get this information and they had in fact been deleted after he asked for them, said Zoe Lofgren to ABC's This Week. We need all the text to get the full picture. This is the interesting part. The Secret Service's account about how text messages from the day before and the day of the Capitol attack were erased has shifted several times. At one point, the explanation from the Secret Service for the lost texts was because of software upgrades, according to the Inspector General. At another point, the explanation was because of device replacements. The Inspector General also said that though the Secret Service opted to have his office do a review of the agency's response to the Capitol attack, in lieu of conducting after-action reports, it then stonewalled the review by slow-walking production materials. There were claims during the Trump administration that even the Secret Service, which is widely, I don't know if widely considered, but widely expected to be an apolitical organization involved only in protecting individuals in positions of power, including the president, their family, and others, even though that's the idea. The allegations during the Trump presidency were that even Secret Service had turned political and that there were essentially Trump hacks within Secret Service, maybe not at the highest levels, but at medium and agent levels. If indeed that was the case, it would make sense that they would all of a sudden be wanting to be very cloudy about what took place on January 5th and January 6th, particularly now in light of Cassidy Hutchinson's claims before the committee that Trump tried to get Secret Service to take him to the Capitol for the riot, that Trump tried to commandeer a vehicle, that Trump lunged at a Secret Service agent, and on and on and on. So the circumstantial case would give us a number of reasons to suspect why the Secret Service might just not have accidentally deleted the exact texts that were requested. As of this morning, deleted Secret Service texts to be sent to January 6th committee by Tuesday tomorrow. So it does appear as though the Secret Service texts will be turned over. And on Thursday night is what is at least for now considered to be the last January 6th hearing. We will see what role these text messages play then. You really can't make this stuff up. Now, remember, as we are learning here, deleted and retrievable are two different things. And if you zoom out for a moment and think about January 5, January 6th, Trump's daily visitor and call log has that very suspicious 7-hour gap. Talked about that months ago. Mike Pence didn't want to get into the car with Secret Service when the rioters were getting into the Capitol, and they were chanting "Hang Mike Pence," and a gallows had been built. Pence was hesitant to get into the car with Secret Service. Why exactly, we don't know. And now we have the allegation, and it seems to be proven, that Secret Service texts were deleted. Look at the pattern. Extraordinarily odd, extraordinarily bizarre. And in the next 72 to 96 hours, we may have more insights into exactly what is in those text messages. Let me know what you expect. Find me on Twitter at @dpacman. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpacman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpacman.com. We are going to be doing the next David Pakman Show live town hall next Tuesday, July 26th. It is going to be 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. It will be on the Pakman Live YouTube channel like we've been doing recently. Would love for you to call in. Everyone is welcome to do so. Make sure you're subscribed at youtube.com/Pakman Live. More info forthcoming, but looking forward to it. We'll take all questions for about an hour and a half, and that will be that. Also, remember, you can sign up at joinpacman.com. The David Pakman Show, viewer and listener supported. You can use the coupon code BIGVOTING22 to get a discount at joinpacman.com. So this is the expected result of what is happening nationally with abortion rights and with Roe v. Wade. We talked about last week how this was a concern. This was something that was expected to happen. And now it is happening. Texas hospitals are refusing to see people with serious pregnancy issues for fear of violating post-Roe abortion ban, according to a medical group. We talked about it 10 days ago. And much like with other things, people wrote in saying, David, that's hypothetical. David, that's theoretical. Well, it's now reportedly happening. Check this out. The Texas Medical Association says some hospitals are refusing emergency care for pregnancy complications. They fear violating the near total abortion ban in Texas. The group said a woman was refused treatment for her ectopic pregnancy until it eventually ruptured. This is per the Dallas Morning News. In a letter to the Texas Medical Board seen by the newspaper, the association said it received numerous complaints that hospitals were blocking doctors from giving pregnant people medically necessary care, which includes ending a pregnancy. Remember that when I first reported on this, some of the responses were, David, that's not going to happen because there are exceptions in these bills. And as I pointed out, the medical exceptions in the Texas abortion bill really are up to the discretion of the doctor and can easily lead to gray area scenarios where the doctors are afraid of being second guessed, not only by lawyers, but by politicians, sued for the actions that they decide to take. And even if it would apparently be legal, and even if you fought it and defend yourself and get a lawyer and ultimately prevail, what doctor wants to deal with that? Even if you believe you will ultimately come up on the right side of the law, do you really want to be dealing with that for years? Because that's how long a lot of these things will take. So the exceptions explanation is bogus. The article goes on to say, according to the paper, the letter described one case of a woman who had an ectopic pregnancy, which allows the pregnancy that grows in the fallopian tubes will never be viable, but will be life-threatening. She was said to have been refused treatment until her pregnancy ruptured. When you delay or prevent care in that scenario, it creates a substantial risk for the patient's future reproductive ability and poses a serious risk to the patient's immediate physical well-being. Understand that with this condition, doctors know this is not going to ultimately lead to a live human. I don't even know the words to use. It's just not. And the correct thing in these situations is to assist in terminating the pregnancy. If you don't, not only can you put the pregnant woman at health risk, you can also jeopardize her ability to even have future healthy babies. And doctors are saying, even though that's the case, the risk to me legally feels so great that we may, and in this case did, refuse treatment. The forced birth people keep emailing me saying, oh, you're fear-mongering about that. You're fear-mongering about that. And of course, it's now happening exactly as predicted. And by the way, for all of the claims that they are pro-life, when the mother dies, if it's before the fetus is viable, the fetus dies too. Not exactly pro-life to say 2 deaths instead of what they believe to be 1. And when you think about what's happening in Texas, it doesn't really sound like a developed country. I mean, zoom out. I tweeted about this. If I told you there's a place on this planet, it has a notably higher infant mortality rate than much of the developed world, talking about Texas, doctors are afraid of treating women with pregnancy complications because there's crazy anti-abortion laws inspired by the religion of the people passing them, which makes the doctors worried they'll get arrested for providing care, talking about Texas. And also they're working in facilities and hospitals whose power might go out because they are dependent on generators in some cases because they've got this isolated power grid without redundancy. Now, they have that by choice, not by necessity. There are lots of parts of the world where what I just described is not by choice. Most people would not assume that that's the state of Texas when I give you those 3 things. Higher than most of the developed world infant mortality, doctors fearing giving people the medical treatment they need for fear of arrest, and worries about the power going out because of an isolated power grid. I don't know what most people would think, but most people would not think that it's a state in the United States. That's what's going on in Texas. And it's completely predictable. And it wasn't just us predicting it. It's now happening. There is a video clip I'm going to play for you here of Maria Bartiromo, a Fox News host who has gone from pretty damn good financial reporter 20 years ago to conspiracy theorist Trump brown-noser, suggesting on her Sunday show yesterday that Joe Biden is being fed drugs in order to function and that Barack Obama and Jill Biden may have known it and helped to cover it up, and asking who is really running this White House. It's quite a theory, I must say. And during the clip I'm going to play for you, if you're watching, you'll actually see them put up a 4-box graphic of the people they suspect might really be running the White House, might really be in charge. We're supposed to believe that this is a news channel. This is supposedly a news program on Fox, not an opinion show. All right, let's take a look at it.
Congressman, there were signs that Joe Biden...
And actually, let me just even add before we do this. Maria Bartiromo is interviewing Ronnie Jackson. Ronnie Jackson is Trump's former doctor who claimed Trump is 6'3" and weighs 239 pounds. That's who's being interviewed, for context.
Congressman, there were signs that Joe Biden was declining during the 2020 campaign. I mean, let's face it. He stayed in the basement the whole time during the campaign. So who knew what when? Are they hiding this and feeding him drugs to allow him to function? I know he goes home to Delaware a lot, more than any other president. So
shocking that he's in Delaware more than other presidents, huh?
I guess my question is, what did Obama know? What did Jill Biden know? And who's running the White House right now? And are they covering up for these mental
there could be a cover-up here.
Issues?
Well, that's the big question everybody's asking. Who's really pulling the strings? Who's running
Everybody's asking this, guys. I mean, listen, Ronnie Jackson's telling you.
the country right now? We don't really know the answer to that. We don't know if it's Susan Rice or Ron Klain or if it's Jill Biden or who it is, but somebody else is doing this. They're doing exactly what you said. They're rolling him out at specific time.
And by the way, they have this graphic immediately ready. So it's very hard to believe that they had a graphic ready with the exact people that Ronnie Jackson mentions, putting up this 4-box. Is it really Susan Rice running the White House? Is it Ron Klain, Brian Deese, or Jill Biden?
During the day, he's got good days and bad days, good, and whether or not they have him on drugs, I don't know. There are drugs out there that can increase your alertness and your memory and things of that nature, and cover stuff like this up temporarily. So I'm sure some of that's going on as well, but we don't know because his physician hasn't stood up and took the questions that I took when I was Trump's physician and answered those questions.
Now, it's interesting how Ronnie Jackson says, we don't know, but it does seem that that's what's going on. I mean, he has no knowledge of it. It's not actually known, but he believes that it is going on. He says it is what's going on. We're supposed to believe this is a news channel. Now, aside from the level of irresponsibility in this, I want to mention one other aspect of this entire Joe Biden thing. Now, you all, if you've been watching this, my show, I've said the 2022 and 2020 Joe Biden are not 2012 Joe Biden. Joe Biden humiliated Paul Ryan in the 2012 debates, ran circles around him, had a rapidity and facility with the facts and arguments that is not where Joe Biden is right now. Joe Biden's nearly 80 years old, and that would be common, if not typical of someone his age. But there's a couple different things going on. First, the level of total irresponsibility on what are supposedly news programs. Now, there has been speculation about Joe Biden, which I engage in as well, on opinion programs, and there has been speculation about Trump as well. But Fox claims to be news. And think back to when Trump got out of his plane and his car was right in front of him and he just wandered off and had to be brought back by Secret Service, when he was sitting across from Rudy Giuliani and said, "Where's Rudy?" and looked around, when he said he wants to get to the oranges of the investigation, when he referred to himself as Prump instead of Trump, when he referred to Barack Obama as Obama, when he talked about the Drock boxes, and I could give you the Fox was silent. Fox was silent. So there's also that hypocrisy. And then lastly, when they talk about Biden was in his basement, if Biden was in his basement and suffering from cognitive decline, doesn't it make it even more humiliating that a guy suffering from cognitive decline who didn't leave his basement got 8 million more votes than the sitting president? Now, their counter would be, well, those numbers were fake. So now you've got two conspiracies. You've got the cover up of the cognitive decline and the theft of the election. At some point, we have to say, guys, that's it. That's it. It's too far. But they don't even seem to get how humiliating it is for Trump to have lost if those indeed are the situations. Everyone is asking this. Ronnie Jackson says, wait, they are? That's news, Fox News, which they claim to be. Folks, it looks to me that California Governor Gavin Newsom is running for president in 2024. California Governor Gavin Newsom was interviewed by Fox LA, and Gavin Newsom comes out swinging and points out exactly what I've been saying about Democrats for a decade now. Gavin Newsom says, we shouldn't be playing defense, we should be playing offense. Democrats must be ferocious. Democrats must be ruthless. This is exactly what I have been saying for over a decade on this program. I am not saying that Gavin Newsom is my preferred politician, that I agree with him on every issue, that he's the epitome of a progressive, but this guy identifies the exact issue, is using the right language, is pointing out exactly what I've been pointing out. He's coming out swinging. Take a look at this from his interview over the weekend.
You have to also recognize what you're up against. And right now, we're up against the ruthlessness of a Republican Party. And I say that not naively. I don't say that even blithely. That's not a cheap shot. You see what's happening to all the progress we've made in the 21st century. All of the rights that we in many ways have taken for granted that have been afforded since the 60s are being rolled back in real time. This is a totally different moment. And we have to wake up with a different mindset. And not just own mindset in terms of just a collaborative mindset, a cup of tea, and everyone's going to work together to get along, figure ways to advance the collective cause. And that's where the party needs to come in. Democrats need the Democratic Party, not the president, not a speaker, not an elected office holder.
Guys, he's pointing out the absurdity of thinking you're going to have a cup of tea with the modern Republican Party and figure things out and hash things out with them. He is exactly correct.
The party, the infrastructure, I think has to organize with more ferocity of focus, more determination to set the agenda, set the course, and put the other party on the defense. They are dominating the narrative. The facts aren't on their side, but they're dominating the narrative. And in this world right now, you dominate the narrative, you win. And that's what I'm worried about, and that's what I'm expressing.
So this is all part of his gubernatorial campaign for re-election. But he is doing a lot of different things that suggest greater ambitions. He is running ads in Florida saying, hey, if you want to come to the place with real freedom, leave Florida, come to California. He's doing interviews in which he is addressing the major issues facing structurally, from a PR perspective, from a messaging perspective, facing the Democratic Party. I'm not endorsing Gavin Newsom. He's not even running. He's not the most progressive. But this is a guy who could be president. Now, if he ran, the smear campaign would be brutal, but it would also be pretty toothless. I mean, okay, stuff about his dating history. You know, he was once married to Kimberly Guilfoyle, who is now married to Donald Trump Jr. That's weird. That's it makes me question someone's choices. That's for sure. He had this dinner at the expensive restaurant, the French Laundry, during COVID when you weren't supposed to be doing that. That was wrong. And he's going to get hit with that. But they are potentially going to expose themselves if they have to run against Newsom, because from what's known, at least right now, the criticisms and attacks on him would be brutal, but also quite toothless. And Gavin Newsom is 100% correct here. They have to be playing defense. They're the ones who are out of step with the views of the American people. Why is it that the left is constantly playing defense? They are the ones who are proposing policy that would be disastrous for millions of Americans, whether it's on healthcare, whether it's getting rid of Roe v. Wade, whatever the case is. He's getting it, and he is speaking about it in a way that I'm not really hearing anybody else talk about it right now. So, not endorsing anyone, it's very interesting that he has got this messaging down pat, because this is the right messaging. And by the way, this messaging is much more relevant on the national stage. I mean, when you think, okay, California has large geographic areas that are conservative, but from a population standpoint, California is not conservative. And when he talks about the strategy and tactics that are required against this Republican Party, it's fine to keep it in mind if you're running for governor in California, but really it's relevant nationally. So this is super interesting. We'll have this interview on our Instagram at David Pakman Show. Check it out. Tell me what you think. I'm liking what I'm hearing. If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. It increasingly is looking like all but a foregone conclusion that failed former President Donald Trump will run again, and will run again specifically because he believes and is telling the people around him that it is the one way that he can avoid criminal prosecution for the things that he has done. We're going to get in a moment to a new legal analysis of whether Donald Trump is heading to an indictment. We're going to get to that. But before we get to that, a blockbuster new report from Rolling Stone. Trump tells team he needs to be president again to save himself from criminal probes. The former president is planning on running for the White House and away from the law. Increasingly, it is believed Trump may even announce before the November midterms. When Donald Trump formally declares his 2024 candidacy, he won't just be running for another term in the White House. He'll be running away from legal troubles, possible criminal charges, and even the specter of prison time. In recent months, Trump has made clear to associates with the legal protections of occupying the Oval Office are front of mind for him. 4 people with knowledge of the situation tell Rolling Stone. Trump has spoken about how when you are the president of the United States, it is tough for politically motivated prosecutors to get to you, says one of the sources who discussed the issue with Trump this summer. He says when, not if, he is president again, a new Republican administration will put a stop to the Justice Department investigation that he views as the Biden administration working to hit him with criminal charges or even put him and his people in prison. Now, that would be a pretty interesting campaign platform. I need this job to stay out of prison. But the craziest part of all of it, I've said before, Trump is a symptom, but the real disease are the people who give him money and who vote for him. If you just had Trump and nobody paid attention and nobody would vote for him, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. Even if Trump admitted in a fundraising email to donors, I need you to donate so I can become president because otherwise they're going to put me in prison. If he just said it that way, which is maybe what he increasingly believes, his cult is trained to think he's smart for committing obvious crimes and getting away with them, or that it's all a witch hunt and people are coming after him. They're not actually conditioned to think critically. Did he do anything wrong? When he called and pressured Georgia and said, I need 11,780 votes, give me a break. When he said that stuff, it must have been because he really won, right? I mean, they're just going after him. It's a witch hunt. And there's a couple of different really important implications to this. Number one, a normal candidate and or a normal country would never have made him the nominee in the first place. If he had become the nominee, they never would have elected him to the presidency. If they had elected him to the presidency and he did the things he did, they would have demanded him removed in a way that elected officials could not have ignored, 25th Amendment, whatever, impeachment and removal. And had that happened, or either way, once the first term is done, given the things that he did, he would have no shot whatsoever of raising money and getting to power again. That's not the situation in the United States. Situation in the United States is the Access Hollywood tape, making fun of disabled reporters, all the little things that early would have just knocked him out, didn't. He consolidated support. He activated the lowest of the low information voters, people who were in many cases not even engaged in politics before, and built a movement around it. And now the test will be, are they still with him? Tens of millions are, but he doesn't need just tens of millions. He probably needs between 65 and 85 million. Can he still get that number? And can he get it by admitting the reason that he's running? Another aspect to this, if Trump sees 2024 as the way to remain a free man, and maybe not literally free from prison, but just free from being in court for the next 10 years of his life, it means he will do whatever he feels he needs to do to destroy anybody who gets in his way. And that includes Ron DeSantis. That includes Greg Abbott. That includes Fox News, which, by the way, we'll talk later, increasingly seems to be setting themselves up to bail on Trump and to support DeSantis. The cult base won't turn on him. Can he build a big enough group of gullible people to get again, it's an estimate, 65, probably at this point, it's more like 70 to 85 million votes that he would need. What happens with the never Trumpers? What happens with the QAnon crazies? You've got the Trump cultists, the old school Republicans, the disaffected moderates, the clueless people who just follow celebrities into politics, or whatever the case may be. All questions to which we don't yet have answers. But the report now is Trump is running. He may announce even before the midterms, and he's doing it, and he will be doing it because he sees it as the way to stay out of criminal charges. The next question is it likely that those criminal charges are actually coming? There is a legal expert, Norm Eisen, who believes at this point, without a doubt, that Donald Trump is heading towards an indictment and that Trump's allies have started to receive target letters, which are different than we want you to testify. Target letters are, you are actually a target in this investigation. Let's discuss with the caveat that, great, until Trump is actually charged, I remain skeptical that anything's going to happen. Newsweek report, Trump heading towards an indictment as allies receive warnings. Attorney Norman Eisen predicted Friday that former President Donald Trump is heading towards an indictment in Georgia after some of his allies there received so-called target letters from the Fulton County DA's office. Now, I want to remind everybody, a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, I said that I don't think charges against Trump are likely. But if there are going to be charges, I believe the likeliest source is the investigation in Georgia, where there was so much evidence, recorded evidence, phone calls, pressure campaigns, back channels, trying to get specific Georgia officials. This wasn't just, I went on the news and said I won, or we held a hearing where Rudy Giuliani had flatulence and also, said that I won. This was specific phone calls. This was targeting Brad Raffensperger. This was sending deputizing Lindsey Graham to go in and say, well, can't we look at it and see if maybe we can do something, find a different conclusion? I believe that the most likely source of charges would be Georgia, and that is indeed what Norm Eisen is saying. The Georgia County DA Fani Willis launched the investigation into Trump early last year after he pressured officials in the state to help overturn President Joe Biden's election win. That effort drew national attention after audio of a call between Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger leaked, in which Trump urged him to find enough votes to change the outcome. Yahoo News first reported Friday that David Schaefer, the state Republican chair in Georgia, and state senators Burt Jones and Brandon Beach have received target letters from Willis warning they could face indictment in connection to her investigation. Jeff DeSantis, a spokesperson for the DA, also said Willis is considering subpoenaing Trump to testify before the special grand jury convened for the probe. Eisen said to the New York Times, I do believe that the great likelihood is he's heading towards an indictment. The legal expert previously served as special counsel to the House Judiciary during Trump's first impeachment. There is powerful proof of violations of Georgia law in the form of the smoking gun tape of him demanding 11,780 votes, when it is perfectly clear from the tape that he knows the votes don't exist. Yes, and that is an important point. Some have very meekly and flaccidly and not credibly tried to defend Trump's request for 11,780 votes by saying, he's not saying fraudulently get me those votes. He's just saying, I believe I really won. It's not that big of a gap to overcome. Let's find legal votes. Anyone who has listened to that tape knows that that is not at all what he was trying to say. So, fascinating, interesting. The news headlines for the last 3 years have been Trump is heading to an indictment. Personally, I know people convinced that Donald Trump is going to be charged. And we may see headlines for the next 6 months saying any day now, Trump's going to be charged. If it happens, I will be the first to tell you, I am not confident that that's going to take place. Now, one other thing, and I want to think ahead here a little bit, because this is another important issue. Imagine Trump gets indicted. Okay. Imagine that the indictment goes to trial. Unlikely, but imagine we get through those two steps. Imagine that there's a jury trial. How do you get a jury that will be able to properly and fairly adjudicate a Donald Trump case? If you have one Trump cultist on the jury, you have a hung jury. How do you even do jury selection? I mean, think about it. How do you find someone who has no opinion about Trump and no significant preconceived notions of his guilt or innocence? And then the next layer is, if you think about, there are non-political people. There are people who know nothing and care nothing about who's president. They just don't pay attention. But are those people we trust to be in the position of even adjudicating the case? Think about people you know who have no idea what has gone on the last 6 years. Are those people that we would be confident saying this is a jury of our peers and they will adjudicate this? Doesn't seem like it to me. So that's sort of like a second order issue if we ever got an indictment and had to pick a jury, but we'll deal with that later. Norm Eisen says Trump is heading towards an indictment, and at least to some degree, Trump must think it's possible, because the report from Rolling Stone is he plans to run for 24, and it's to keep himself out of prison, essentially, away from criminal charges as he sees it. What do you expect? Let me know. Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. Well, per a number of reports, including ones we looked at earlier, Donald Trump is getting ready to announce his 2024 Republican primary presidential candidacy. Number of reasons why he's looking to do it. It seems pretty clear. Now, it does seem as though his mood is not quite right. Donald Trump spent the better part of Sunday afternoon absolutely losing it on Truth Social, his social media platform, whose name even he gets wrong sometimes. He delivered a 14-post screed all within a short period of time, Sunday afternoon, and something seems to be very, very wrong. Donald Trump starting by posting a Breitbart article about how Mike Lee is leading Evan McCullen. I believe his name is actually McMullen, but who cares, right? in Utah's Senate, the Utah Senate's general election race. Trump likes Mike Lee. Mike Lee is a Trumpist. Then Trump posts an article from the Federalist saying that courts have ruled states didn't follow their own election laws in 2020. This is a very popular claim, part of the dozen or 24, however, different claims that are being made by Trump Republicans about the 2020 election, that states didn't follow their own laws. Now, as we've covered before and covered pretty extensively, what they mean by that is that in some states, rules about elections were changed without going through the legislature. That's different than states didn't follow their own laws. What it means is that other reasons, in particular, the pandemic, were used to say, actually, we're going to let whoever wants to vote absentee vote absentee. Of course, they have to go through the process, have to be registered to vote, have to be citizens, have to be alive, all these different things. And it's just a talking point. The states broke their own laws. No, they're just the rules for how to run an election were modified in ways consistent with the law. Trump then posting an article from townhall.com. Trump was right. They're sending their rapists. Now, this is, of course, related to the story of the 10-year-old girl who was tragically raped and impregnated in Ohio, and due to Ohio's abortion law, had to leave Ohio, go to Indiana to obtain an abortion. This is now, as I said last week, the thing they're going to focus on. At first, they said the story was made up. Kristi Noem, Jim Jordan. It's a long list of different people who said the story's just fake. There is no 10-year-old girl, or if there is, she wasn't raped, or if she was raped, she wasn't impregnated. If she was impregnated, she didn't really need to go to Indiana. Well, it all happened. It then was learned that the believed perpetrator is allegedly undocumented. Now they care about the story, but not about the part that we've been talking about. So Trump then goes to that. Then Trump posts an article from Hannity, worst president ever. After the inflation report, worst president trends on Twitter. Now, of course, as I'm sure you know by now, inflation has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Inflation is happening globally. It's much higher than in the US in some countries. It's much lower than in the US in some countries. It doesn't have anything to do with Biden. Trump's just rapid fire posting this stuff. Okay. Next, Trump posts the picture of the alleged rapist in the 10-year-old Ohio story. Of course, saying that there's a cover-up of the fact that he's believed to be an illegal immigrant. There is no such cover-up. I reported it to you within the first minute of telling you the story. The real cover-up is they are covering up the fact that they called the story fake for a week until they could no longer deny it, and none of them apologized for it. Trump truthing about that. Trump then posting an oversized image related to inflation and the changes to inflation, which of course have nothing to do with Joe Biden. So Trump jumping on that one, just rapid fire, desperate Trump. Trump then posting an article from Yahoo News called Daily. This is John Daly, a pro-Trump golfer. Daly calls for British Open return to Daddy Trump's Turnberry. The British Open was taken out of Trump's golf course. John Daly likes Trump, and Trump signal boosting that. What is Trump doing that he has so much time? Trump then posting an article from Just the News, not a particularly trustworthy website. Bombshells undercut the big lie. 21 confirmed illegalities and irregularities from 2020. Folks, 150 million votes. 150 million votes. They have now found, think about this, they have now found, after nearly 2 years, 21 instances of wrongdoing. 21. 150 million people voted. Trump wants us to see it and say, wow, I guess he was right. Then Trump with a Breitbart article, exclusive Trump-endorsed Senate candidate Mark Wayne Mullen. The red wave is real and it's coming. Meaningless article. The red wave may be coming, but all polling is showing a dramatic shift away from Republicans and towards Democrats, thanks to what happened with Roe v. Wade, thanks to what has not happened on gun safety, which is nothing has happened. Trump then posting a graph he probably doesn't even understand. Exclusive Blake Masters. Trump endorsement has been like rocket fuel for this campaign. Maybe. I mean, okay, let's wait and see what happens there. Trump then posting from the insanely dangerous and weaponized conspiracy website, The Gateway Pundit. Trump appointed judge blocks Air Force from expelling unvaccinated service members and enforcing vaccine mandate. Just anti-vax pablum that we've seen from Trump. Trump then with an article from Right Side Broadcasting, another extreme right-wing media outlet, that Tim Michaels will win if he remains strong on the rigged and stolen election, Trump says. Otherwise, he has no chance. Increasingly untrue, actually. Talking about the rigged and stolen election seems to poll worse and worse, even with Republican voters. And then Donald Trump posting a video of Mark Levin from Fox News claiming that the January 6th committee is a setup to, quote, kill the Republican Party. Trump then posting a video of Sean Hannity talking to Laura Ingraham on Fox News. And then Donald Trump saying the Unselect Committee and the fake news media refuse to go anywhere near these two topics, especially the rigged election, where the evidence of fraud is incontestable. This is a former president, folks. Just posting. Then Trump posting memes, one about how people had more savings under Trump. And of course, the reason for that is everything was closed. And everything being closed and people just sitting at home due to the pandemic increased the savings rate. Many countries saw that, had nothing to do with Trump. And by the way, the funniest part about bragging about the larger savings rate under Trump is a high savings rate is not considered particularly good for the economy. And what I mean by that is when you save money in a savings account, you're not injecting it into the economy. It's under traditional economic thinking, which people like Trump claim to believe in and support. You don't want people saving, you want people spending. This is something they talk about all the time. And then also Donald Trump congratulating Cam Smith on winning the Open Championship at St. Andrews. Okay, nobody really cares about that. A 14-post screed, and Trump is reportedly panicked about forthcoming criminal charges and believed to be announcing his 2024 run very soon. I have to tell you, part of me wonders and thinks might be interesting to let him back on Twitter. What would he even do if he was allowed back on Twitter? I am going to play a video for you from Fox News that makes it very clear. Fox News is positioning itself to hit the abort button on supporting Donald Trump. They're getting ready to dump Trump and support Ron DeSantis in 2024, but they're leaving themselves an open window to support Trump if Trump is the nominee. So if you were doubting that Fox News would rather Trump not be the nominee, check out this deliberately edited man on the street type segment where Fox News reporters went out and they were talking to random Trump voters. And the question was, do you want Trump to run again or not? And of course, they could have crafted this in any way that they want. You can just keep interviewing people until you get the clips that you want. They selected mostly random Trump voters who don't want Trump running in 2024. It is very clear that Fox News is setting themselves up to abort the Trump train. Take a look at this.
I don't want him to. I like what he stands for. I like what he does, but he upset too many people, and he upset him really bad. So I don't think he's good for the party.
He needs to get back in. He already had gained that respect from all the world leaders and finish what he, started.
By the way, that's the random Trump supporter in there. He gained respect from world leaders. World leaders were laughing at him literally, both behind his back and sometimes to his face. Behind his back at a number of different summits, to his face at that wacky UN speech where the room just started laughing at Trump. Respect.
It's too bad that he did what he did do and was fought the whole way along on darn near everything that he did, but that's what happened, so I'd like to see him not run.
If he did, I would vote for him, but I would not recommend he runs. I voted for Trump both times, and I love him. I think he was a good candidate, but I think his time has passed.
I couldn't care less about President Trump personally. I prefer somebody different, but if he is the nominee, I'll probably vote for him.
You know what? I voted for him for my very first time I voted for him. I don't think it'll be best for our country for him to run for re-election. You know, I'm thankful for everything that he's done, but I think that our Republican Party needs to be united.
At this point, he's a little too polarizing, and I think that there are candidates out there, Republican candidates obviously, that maybe be able to pull in people that he would lose to be able to change this.
I would like to see, you know, Governor DeSantis or someone like that, some new blood in the race.
DeSantis run for president, and if he wants to, then he can pick up Donald as the vice president.
We're from Florida. We're big fans of DeSantis on this one. He seems to be much more common sense and able to communicate better to both sides to get those people back that.
So remember, they could have picked anybody. They could interview, they're only including a few people in this. They could have interviewed 50 or 60 or 70 people and gotten whatever they wanted. Everybody saying Trump should run, or not everybody saying DeSantis should. They have chosen these people to create this story.
The switch.
He's done a good job at everything he's tried to do, despite all, you know, it's not all just what he says. It doesn't just happen like that. I believe he's done a good job with a lot of things, and that's just my personal belief.
I really like DeSantis.
All right, so you get it. Fox is in total control of this story. They could make it say anything. They could turn it into a campaign ad for Trump if they wanted it. They are looking towards the future. They seem to think the future is not Trump. And the long-term viability of Fox News as a business enterprise depends on it being sort of like the state media arm of some Republican authoritarian regime. And so this is self-interest at work. I want people to understand that. It's not about they like Trump's foreign policy or they don't like it or whatever. The idea here is they want to get someone other than Trump in. If Trump ends up winning the nomination, of course, they will still back him. But right now they're saying, we think we will be better off with the old version of Fox, where we just all get behind a more popular authoritarian right-wing regime rather than someone who's as polarizing. And so they've crafted this narrative. Everybody seems to want DeSantis. We will see how the primary shakes out if and when people announce. Neither Trump nor DeSantis have yet announced, but this is probably part of why Trump would rather make the announcement sooner than later that he's running. And it will be to his advantage in order to push people to have to take more of a risk to not support him. Right now, with no one declared, it's easier for Fox to run these pieces. Hey, look, it just sort of seems like the public wants someone else, and that someone else happens to be Ron DeSantis. If Trump announces, it puts them in a much more difficult position to keep running anti-Trump, pro-DeSantis pieces. So that's to Trump's interest then to announce sooner. Every indication is that he's going to do that. We have a voicemail number, and that number is 219-2-DAVID-P. After I posted a horrible, horrible voicemail I received to my Instagram, the Eggman, who has done time in prison and is a Jewish man himself, and that's relevant to this story, he called in to weigh in on it. Take a listen to this.
Hey, Dave, I just went on Instagram and listened to that voice message from the guy in Carolina, down south, saying he wanted
It was actually West Virginia.
to smack the taste out of your mouth. It was horribly anti-Semitic and does not like you. Dave, I just want to tell you about those people. I know them for real. I work with them. But best of all, I was in prison with them. Dave, you know I have a giant Star of David tattoo on my back. I am obviously freaking Jewish, okay? There are actual Nazis in prison. When these people saw me with the Star of David tattoo walking around the yard or in the TV room with no shirt on, do you know what they did to me, David? They asked me for legal help and to get them weed. Shalom, brother.
So the Eggman, I guess, playing up some stereotypical tropes there. But I think his main point is that when he faced some of these anti-Semites in person, they weren't willing to do the things they were willing to maybe do online. I guess that's the point that the Eggman is making there. Sort of interesting, I guess, but always appreciate his insights. That's for sure. Okay, on today's bonus show, we will be talking about Georgia's second largest school district allowing non-officers to carry guns. They're doing it. It's happening. Also, wealthy countries are talking about fourth COVID shots, Omicron-tailored COVID shots. Much of Africa still hasn't gotten any doses, and we're going to talk about that. And third, this story going viral, BMW, the vehicle manufacturer, BMW, is offering heated seats on a monthly subscription. The car comes equipped with them, but you can only turn them on with a monthly subscription. What? How does that work? We will talk about it on today's bonus show. Get instant access by signing up at joinpacman.com. You can use the coupon code BIGVOTING22. We will see you then.